Let's do chapter 5 before bed. I believe there will be a fly joining us for this chapter. Chapter 5. Nick smoothed his hands down his shirt and inspected himself for the third time in a minute. He could hear Teddy watching videos on his phone in the living room. Teddy had gotten ready over an hour earlier, too early for Nick. He wanted to tell him as much, but knew it was just excitement. Nick felt it too, however. It seemed pointless to get ready so early. The mystery was getting to them. The person next door had scoped him out and discovered his YouTube channel. What kind of a person would do that? And what else had they discovered? He also wondered what it was like inside that mansion, and how would a creator's party unfold? Did the party require him to bring a camera? He didn't want to offend anyone by filming them, nor look like a fool walking around with a bulky camera around his neck. To counter this, he planned to use his phone's camera if needed. Nick checked that his phone was sufficiently charged before pulling it off the charger and leaving the bathroom. "We ready?" asked Teddy. "Let's do this." The sky was dark, the overcast making it hard to see. With no direct path leading from their yard directly to the mansion, they had to find another way. Instead, Nick and Teddy walked out to the road and made their way up the driveway. As they approached, the large black gates rose to twice their height. Behind it, the mansion towered over even higher, though it was some distance away. All of the lights were on, and the soft rapidity of a bass line floated out to them from inside. Nick and Teddy glanced at one another, and then Nick pressed the button on a speaker next to the gate. They waited. "Can I help you?" came a strong female voice from the speaker. Said Nick. "We're here for the party?" "Name?" "I'm Nick from Nick All the Way, with my roommate Teddy. We received your invitation earlier. We live next door." There was another pause, and then the gates made a loud clicking sound and began to swing open. Teddy began to walk. Nick moved fast to keep up. The real size of the mansion came into perspective as they walked further up the driveway. It was large and grand, more of a palace. Its 3 stories were sleek and had an air of being futuristic, while at the same time there emanated a style of something majestic, like an architecture from ancient Greece. Nick and Teddy moved past the water fountain in the driveway and up the large concrete front steps. The excessively large front doors stood to greet them. "Should we knock?" asked Teddy. As if in answer, the doors swung open, letting loose the sound of music and people talking excitedly. "Welcome," said an attractive girl at the door. "Come in. I'm Jason's assistant. Don't hesitate to come to me if you need anything." She held her hand out for them to come inside. Nick wondered if he should take his shoes off, deciding against it as he saw the assistant was still wearing hers. The front entrance of the mansion was a fairly large-sized room with a high ceiling and grand staircase that led to a balcony above. From his vantage, he could see that the balcony overlooked the next room. The rooms where the party appeared to be. Beside the stairs, 3 hallways were leading away from the room, one in every direction. The assistant walked down the one in front of them, the one that led toward the noise and people. Nick could feel Teddy moving close to his right, almost uncomfortably so. "Should we get in there?" he asked. Nick began walking as Teddy kept pace at his side. The hallway was in shadow compared to the room beyond, the noise growing as they went. Nick had to squint as they reached the other side. The room seemed so bright, as though a spotlight were shining down on everything. They were momentarily blinded by it. As his eyes adjusted, Nick saw a very large room with people everywhere. They formed in groups, some dancing, others playing games. He saw a few people trying to throw hula hoops over a lamp. Another was playing beer pong, except instead of red Solo cups and ping pong balls, they were using trash cans and volleyballs. Every group had at least one camera, someone recording their actions at all times. As Nick's eyes adjusted even further, he saw that a balcony ringed the entire room. There were people up there as well. They were in smaller groups, 2s and 3s, leaning on the rail, watching the party down below. A few of them were recording. Nick had to wonder at how foolish all of this must look to an outsider. Someone who didn't understand YouTube, didn't understand the business behind it, the money. All they would see is people fighting for attention. Nick stopped walking as he realized he recognized one of the bystanders on the balcony. She stood by herself, watching everyone down below. It was Jordan, the reporter who had taken his words about Tom cheating and turned them into a public article. Teddy was already moving further into the party, too distracted by the spectacle going on around himself to notice that Nick had stopped walking. Nick turned and went back through the hallway, marched up the stairs and across the balcony. He could feel the anger rising in his chest as he approached where Jordan leaned. Ruh-roh. Okay. As he approached where Jordan leaned. Here poised the person who had ruined his day, who had put him in the awful position where he had to lie to his cousin. "Hey," he said, letting all of his anger manifest into that one word. Jordan jumped and spun around to face him. "You," Nick continued, realizing he wasn't entirely sure what he wanted to say. "You're not a good person." "Excuse me?" said Jordan. "You lied to me, published our private conversation." The shock was wearing off, and Jordan squared up with him. "I never said I wasn't. If you chose to believe I was some bimbo at a club, that's on you. You knew what you were doing." "And what was that?" asked Jordan. "Publishing my private conversation for a drama piece," said Nick. "I'm sorry," said Jordan. "I didn't realize exposing someone cheating on your cousin was going to upset you so much." Nick huffed in frustration. "That's besides the point. You'd prefer he keep cheating on her forever? That's not your choice to make," said Nick. "At least this way she can move on with her life." She needed to know. "It was my private conversation," Nick repeated. Jordan shrugged. "And your cousin is all the better for it. I was forced to tell her it was a lie. She doesn't even believe your article." Jordan's eyebrows went up, and Nick had a sudden urge to clamp his hand over his mouth. "You lied?" she said, incredulous. "Ladies and gentlemen, a modern-day knight in shining armor." "You weren't there," said Nick, moving to the rail and leaning against it. He stared down at the party below, everyone having a good time. "Why would you do that?" Jordan pressed. Nick's stomach began to tie up in a knot. He wanted to say because he was an idiot, a coward, but he wouldn't admit as much in front of her. He wouldn't let her have the satisfaction. "You don't get it," he said. "Didn't see what I..." "You don't get it," he said. "Didn't see what that article did to her." "Maybe," said Jordan, "but it was done, and it wouldn't be long for her to start down the road of recovery." "You weren't there," Nick repeated. "That's easy for you to say from the other side of the computer screen." "I didn't write the thing." Sorry. "I did the right thing," said Jordan. "I'm sorry I got paid for it. And I'm sorry you felt the need to lie to cover it up." Nick continued to stare down at the crowd. He had to tell himself not to grind his teeth, lest it start to hurt. "Your cousin's husband, he's the real problem," said Jordan. People like him who go around cheating like it's nothing. It's wrong, and their victims deserve to know what kind of relationship they're in. I'd make a comment, but I don't want to end up in the paper." He didn't look back at her, choosing instead to continue to watch the crowd. One of the guys stood on the arm of a leather couch. His friends were already recording him, and more cameras turned towards him as they took notice. A moment later, he leapt into the air and came crashing down on the table, holding all of the drinks. Bottles went flying all over as the guy curled into a ball on the broken table. All the people holding cameras moved in closer for a better shot. "Are you enjoying the party?" Nick felt startled to hear a male voice. He turned back to find Jordan was gone, and in her place stood a man. He was dressed immaculately, with his hair combed to the side in sandy blonde curls. His skin looked tan and contrasted with his bright smile. He had an expensive-looking silver watch that matched both his necklace and the ring on his pinky. His dark blue eyes peered at Nick, searching. Nick knew in an instant that he was staring at somebody famous, an A-list celebrity, a movie star. The most popular videos in the world for the next few weeks, they're all being created here tonight, he said in a voice both smooth and strong. "That's why I made sure the room had the best lighting and sound quality." Nick swallowed hard, his mind going blank. "It's very nice," he said, when no other thoughts came forthcoming. "And the music," the man went on. "Every song you hear tonight, I paid to have made custom. It's some of the top musicians in the world, and it's all royalty-free." Nick paused. "You did?" "Every song." Nick focused on the music, realizing he recognized the singer. "But that's Laser X." "A friend of mine," said the man. "We worked out a deal, and he threw in this song for free." A deal. Nick could only wonder at what that meant, at who this man was, or what he did. "Who are you?" Nick stammered. "Do you live here?" The man's smile widened, and he seemed to grow brighter. He held out his hand. "Jason Cross." "The Cross?" Nick asked. "The one from the invitation?" "That's right, bro. The one and only." Nick pulled back and looked at him again, realizing this was the person who invited him here. The name on the golden card, Cross, the neighbor next door who lived like a prince. This was his castle, and this was his party. "I'm Nick." "I know." "I live next door." "I know." "You invited me here?" "I did." "Why?" For only the slightest of a second, Jason's smile faltered, and then it beamed back, bright as ever. "What kind of a neighbor would I be if I didn't extend an invitation to the person right next door?" "Right. Well, it's nice to finally meet you. Nick said. Are you the only one who lives here? There's a few other creators I put up in the guest quarters, plus my assistant, said Jason. Nick glanced around as if he were taking the whole place in, then focused back on Jason. That's cool. Jason cleared his throat. Is it true you know Daisy from Home Heart and Health? Daisy, said Nick, taken off guard for a moment. Oh yeah, she's my cousin. That's amazing, said Jason. She makes great videos. Yeah, said Nick. I don't watch them very often, though. They're not really my thing. You should. They're helpful, sometimes in ways you wouldn't expect. Nick nodded, feeling slightly awkward. Yeah, I guess you're right. Her husband, though, Jason's smile faded again, only this time it stayed gone. I can't stand anyone who would cheat like that. Nick felt the heat rise involuntarily shook his head. Nick felt the heat rise and involuntarily shook his head. Jordan. Jason's smile returned. Ah, who wants to dwell on something like that at a party? Nick forced a smirk, but it felt unnatural to hold, so he let it go. How do you feel about a collaboration? Jason asked. There's some big names here. I could hook you up. We could even do one if you want. You would do that for me? Asked Nick. He wondered how big Jason's channel could be, that he offered it along with the others. Jason turned to the railing and observed the crowd below, seemed to think for a moment. Let's make a deal. Deal? Jason's dark blue eyes locked onto Nick's, making him freeze. I want to meet your cousin. In exchange, you can do collaborations with anyone here tonight. You want to meet Daisy? Nick thought about all of the people in the room, people with millions of subscribers. It was a life-changing deal, but he would have to intrude on his cousin. Unless she benefited too, he couldn't be sure, but Jason must have a large following himself. How else could he end up in the position he was in, with a palace filled with social influencers, famous singers gifting him their songs? Maybe Daisy could do a collaboration with him for her own channel. Everyone would win. I can talk to her about you guys doing a collaboration, said Nick. See if she'd be down. I don't want a collaboration, said Jason. I want to meet her, privately, one-on-one. Nick hesitated. That's kind of an odd request. I'm not a normal man. Nick felt that no was not an option. This man, this Jason Cross, was someone used to getting what he wanted. It could only be speculated as to what would happen if he were denied. Nick could picture himself being thrown out, perhaps by some hidden bodyguard waiting in the shadows. I'm not sure Tom will be cool with that, said Nick, forcing himself to break eye contact and glance at the floor. Tom is irrelevant, said Jason. Besides, he'll be too busy with his extramarital activities to notice. How am I even supposed to invite Daisy to something like that? Asked Nick. Invite her to visit your place. I'll come over when she's there, said Jason. She won't even know it was set up. Just a friendly neighbor stopping by at the right time. Nick took one last glance up at him, then sighed. Fine, I'll see what I can do. Jason's smile brightened even more than it already had been. He placed his hand on Nick's shoulder. I knew you were a good guy. He turned to the railing, to the crowd below, spreading his arms wide. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my humble abode. The crowd all began to cheer, their cameras turning up. Tonight, we are here to honor my new friend and neighbor, Nick, from the YouTube channel Nick All the Way. He glanced over at Nick and winked before turning back to the crowd. He's a good guy, and as such, I want you to show him a good time, all right? The crowd cheered again, and Jason backed away from the railing. That should do it. Nick suddenly felt the pressure. Jason had just made his payment, and now it was on Nick to deliver. Part of himself wanted only to go and hide. The assistant that had welcomed them to the house came up the stairs and headed for Jason. "You've got a call waiting in your office," she said. Jason nodded, then backed away with her back towards the stairs. "I'll contact you tomorrow about when I want to meet your cousin. I have to go now." He was soon down the stairs and out of sight, and Nick remained standing alone at the railing. He couldn't help but feel uneasy about the deal he had just made. He wasn't even sure he would get Daisy to go along with it. It's not like they even hung out together. At that moment, Nick noticed a few people were filming him. Now that he paid attention, he recognized almost every camera turned to him sporadically. He had to wonder if there was something wrong with his wardrobe. Moving away from the rail and towards the stairs, Nick made sure his pants were zipped up. They were. He had a momentary reprieve from there before he came back into the party room from below. The moment he walked into the room, they were on him. No less than 6 people tried to introduce themselves all at once. Nick did his best to smile and wave, listening to their names, knowing there was no chance he would remember. He finally spotted Teddy and used the excuse to pull himself away from the crowd. "Dude, what is happening?" Teddy asked as he approached. "I'll tell you when it's a little more private," said Nick. Teddy eyed him for a moment and then nodded. "Well, Mr. Guest of Honor, should we partner up and play some games?" "Sounds good to me," said Nick. He caught a glimpse of someone filming him with their phone and stood a little straighter. He had to wonder how many people would be watching that video in the morning. How many indeed? I guess we'll find out soon.